Texas.
Yep. And now we're doing that shit. And it is that funny thing where people have this idea. They're like, yeah, the United States, we've done some stuff that maybe isn't the greatest thing ever.
We've done it to protect our citizens from terror.
Or the idea that shit that we did with like injecting people with syphilis or all the other crazy shit that we've done. The idea that at some point, like maybe in the 80s, everyone in the government was like, let's stop being assholes. What were we doing? What were we thinking? Let's just stop doing that crazy shit. Of course it still goes on. Of course there's still the things that are going. By the way, what do they say? In rivers and politics, the lightest shit floats to the surface. The stuff you know about is 1,000,000 times less freaky than the shit you're not hearing about. The deep level stuff. That's the stuff you got to wonder about, man. Because Bradley Manning, that's a show pony.
Yeah, when you see FEMA pumping, 500,000 coffins into Texas.
Yeah.
And they have these camps set up.
Yeah.
They have these gigantic camps set up where you're like, what is going on in here? There's high fences and these dormitories. Yeah. And there's armored fucking towers and shit. And you're like, wait a minute. Yeah. What are these rifle towers doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what do you have here?
Dude, there's already a room in one of those things with your fucking name on the door. Guaranteed. And you too, Red Band. You guys are going to get dragged off.
Dude, what are you talking about? You're going. I'm
Fuck that, dude. I got
I'm a sports commentator. I'll quit this job.
I got a cyanide pill in my molar. I'm going to snap that thing the moment they come to the door.
I'm undercover.
This, Brian has just been a brilliant actor this whole time. You thought was a retard?
Brian's CIA. I've always thought that.
This this shit that's going on right now in New York with this Hurricane Sandy, to me, it's making me think, of the real possibility that I never really considered of society falling apart.
Sure.
Like, it really fucking could fall apart.
Sure.
Like, this, one of the things they said was this is a once in a 100-year storm. Like, it's every 100 years a storm.
Yeah.
They actually said after it hit that they had never had a storm like that before.
Yeah.
But if you stop and think about it, like, how much history do we have for storms? What do we have, 300 years that's reliable?
No,
do we even have 300 years?
I heard we have 100 years of accurate temperature measures. I just heard this because they were talking about it on NPR. But like 100 years, and after that you have to start going into ice core samples and tree rings and stuff to figure it out.
And then you can only figure out like late frosts, and you get like a limited amount of information.
Yeah.
But like, this could happen. This could happen all over the fucking place. Like, we're just lucky that for the 100 years of our lives that we haven't had more of these superstorms. These superstorms could be a regular thing.
Well, it's the hockey stick idea. The hockey stick, which is like you've got the regular temperature, you have the general temperature of the Earth, and that goes on for a while. There was like an ice age, apparently a mini ice age in the 1800s where shit got really cold for some reason. Maybe because of a volcano. I can't remember. I don't know. I'm not a fucking geologist. But the hockey stick, the handle of the hockey stick represents basic temperature for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And then where we're at right now is this insane acceleration and temperature, which people call global warming. And so some people say, well, the winters are colder, but the global warming people are climate change. That's something I think the scientists who came out with this research, they feel like they shouldn't have called it global warming because it's a confusing term, and when shit isn't warm, people are like, you're wrong. It's climate change. The idea is, if the oceans get warmer, hurricanes happen later in the season. If hurricanes happen later in the season, then they also meet up with winter storms, which is what this motherfucker was. It wasn't just a hurricane. It was a hurricane meeting like a storm that's normal in October. It's like the two coming together.
It's actually 3.
3? Fuck. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Fuck.
It was the hurricane combining with 2 other storms.
That's it. So that kind of shit is like, this, people are saying it's once every 100 years, but it's like, think of fucking Katrina. Think of all the different crazy events that have been happening just in the last 10 or 15 years, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on. Obviously, something's going down. And I think there is a huge possibility that people are just going to have to get used to moving away from the fucking oceans or redesigning homes to like handle that shit.
While I was in Montana, we were in a place called the Badlands, and we were going down the Missouri River. And we stayed and camped mostly in this place that used to be the Great Western Inland Sea. And it was a warm water ocean. So the floor of this area where we were hiking was all mud. It was like a silt. because it was the bottom of the fucking ocean at one point in time, man. And everywhere you go, as you're walking up these hills, as where the ground breaks away, you find fossilized seashells, and they could be millions of years old, like literally millions of years old, because this used to be a fucking ocean. So it just tells us that we have to abandon this idea that we can stay wherever we want, and that this is our home and we camp out here. No, when the climate changes, which it does all over the Earth doesn't give a fuck if you've got something written on a piece of paper that says that this piece of Antarctica is yours. You can't live in Antarctica, asshole. You got to get out of there. And one point in time, people used to be able to live in Antarctica. They're almost positive of it. It's a controversial subject, but they have a detailed map of the outside. Someone did an accurate map of Antarctica before it was covered in ice.
Right.
That's the only way they found it. It's from the 1500s, and they know that ice has existed in Antarctica for a lot longer than that. So it's an old fucking map. But at one point in time, people used to be able to go around Antarctica, and they made a fucking map of it.
Wait, didn't people say that it was tropical there, or that it was there?
Could be. Yeah, they don't know. Look. There's parts of the world that have varied wildly. I mean, the Nile Valley, where it's a giant desert, used to be a rainforest.
Yeah.
We know that rainforests recede into grasslands. We know that half of North America was covered in a fucking giant glacier just 14,000 years ago. 14,000 years ago, it was like a mile high of ice in a big part of the country. So it's like all this stuff happens whether or not you're driving a Volvo. It doesn't matter. This stuff has changed radically over time before any human influence at all. So then it becomes the weird thing where people don't want to admit that we might have some part in this.
No, it's very political, and a lot of the people who are climate change deniers, as they call them, are fundamentalists.
Yes.
They're very religious people.
Yeah, you're totally right. This fucking young kid who's a Marine brought it up at jiu-jitsu the other day. It was someone was talking about climate change. He's like, it's a natural process. I mean, he's stretching out in his jiu-jitsu gi on. He's like 24. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know? There's dudes out there that are studying ice samples and core samples and trying to figure out fucking what's going on with the magnetosphere. And this 24-year-old kid's like, it's a natural cycle.
Yeah.
Just parroting this right-wing talk radio version of what's going on.
Yep.
I think it changes, but I also think we have something to do with it.
Well, the fundamentalists have always had a real fucking problem with nature. And so whenever people practice nature religion, like when Christianity was starting to spread, those were the people who were getting turned into fucking marshmallows. What's called pagan just meant country dweller. It's people who are familiar with the cycle of the moon, the equinoxes, the fucking solstices. It's people who are connected to the harvest, which is where food comes from, and the sun, which is what makes the food grow. So it's really connected to the earth. And then Christianity came around with this fucking bearded homophobic jock who, you know what I mean? And that guy...
He wasn't a homophobe, though.
Who cried? God?
Jesus?
No, I'm talking about God. His kid was a little wild, but God was... God didn't like it. God didn't like it. God does not like gays. God, according to those people. And God certainly doesn't like people who are slurping back fucking psychedelic brews and having orgies in the forest to celebrate life. God doesn't like those people. And so he burns them. They burnt all these fucking people. Anyway, the point is, there's always a war on between these fundamentalists who want to believe that the earth is some kind of endlessly renewable resource that you can just rip into and fuck up and bomb and do whatever you want to it, and people who are like, no, this is a living organism and it's infested with these scabies bomb throwing super advanced beings that are burrowing deep into its hide and sucking out its blood to fuel.
Yeah, we're literally vampires.
Yeah.
We're feeding off the blood of the organism.
Yes.
That's what runs our entire society, is the blood of the earth. And that's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible when you really try to wrap your head around it, that we may very well be parasites. I mean, that's like that bit that I did at the beginning of my 2005 special, where I talked about how we're like mold on a sandwich. Like that mold, we don't think of mold as individual mold spores.
Sure.
We just think of it as mold. Well, if you looked at us from a distance, you would look at us as like mold. We're a disease. Yeah. And then I said, we might be here to eat the sandwich. I mean, that might be what human beings are here for.
Yeah.
That might be why we're so fucking nuts.
Well, see, this is the fucking thing, man. We don't even we are all doing similar activities that are based almost 100% on the accessibility of that sweet Texas tea. But and that shit comes from inside the earth, and and interestingly enough, that shit that we use to fuel our cars comes from an extinction event, which is really quite fascinating. Is that we fuel our society on the end result of massive changes to the planet, and the pressure is causing organic matter under the earth to transform into fucking oil. It's crazy to think about that. We fuel our cars on an ancient apocalypse that happened. That's a fascinating thing.
Is it an ancient apocalypse, or is it just the accumulation of dead bodies over time?
I think it must. I mean, I think it was whatever that fucking meteor impact was that destroyed all those giant trees back then.
I don't think that's necessarily what they believe. I think they believe that it's a continual cycle of breaking down of organic matter and converting it into oil. And that's why they used to call it dead dinosaurs, but they don't do that anymore because they realize it's a lot of it's even plant matter. I think it's just
it's also everything.
But that's also why certain wells, oil wells, have gone dry and then actually replenished. Not to the I don't know to the original point they were at.
Yeah.
There's a guy who wrote a book on it called Black Gold Stranglehold, I think it was, and his contention was that the oil creation by the earth was just a natural product of just the cycle of the earth. It's just like something that it does, and that we are looking at it like it's this finite resource when it's in fact completely renewable.
Well, that's two. There's like the two schools of thought. So you get the peak oilers who are like, no, man, that shit is not renewable. We're fucked. That's going to run out and we're fucked. And there's no...
Who's right?
What?
Who's right?
God damn, I wish I knew. Don't fucking ask me. I mean, I've just out of a sense of like wanting to be optimistic and having a rosy outlook on things. I love Ray Kurzweil. I love the idea that technology is going to advance to a point where we are able to fix so many of these problems. I tend to fall into that camp. Like my friend Johnny Pemberton, he's not so much, and we always get in arguments over this because he's like, no, it's just going to fucking, the society's like on the brink of collapse. It's going to collapse. Fuck your technology. Motherboards are made of fucking petroleum products. It doesn't matter. Like, so there's not enough time, even if we started producing solar panels now based on the amount.
Yeah, but his version of it is based on the peak oil version.
Yes,
right?
That's the peak oil story.
And his version is also based on it's sort of discounting the impact of the exponential growth of technology. That eventually someone will come up with a way to convert it. I mean, they've got bacteria now that eats plastic. You know, I mean, they've got they can turn water into hydrogen and use it for fuel. There's a lot of crazy shit that's going on right now. You can't totally completely discount that.
Well, I think this simulation theory stuff that I know you guys probably talk about on the show a lot, and I endlessly think about.
Endlessly.
I think that if these scientists continue with their research, which they're trying to do. The guy at the University of Maryland, that theoretical physicist, if they can prove that we're inside a simulator, then just from understanding that, the kind of shit that you could theoretically do if this is a simulation that's running some kind of like weird reproduction of the past, if that's really happening, then time travel becomes super feasible.
I definitely have been thinking lately more and more that is what the case is. Because just like ridiculous things like you saying the Pokemon thing the other day, Joe, the last podcast, that was creepy to me. Like, I can't stop thinking about that.
Yeah, why did I come up with Pokemon? And he had a Pokemon outfit that he just happened to have, and then he walks in the room with it on. It's just fake.
We never talked about Pokemon before me.
Never. But I reached in the back of my head, I pulled out Pokemon.
That was fucking weird. See, that's simulation shit.
There's definitely, our lives are very strange. Very, very, very strange. You know, Ari and I were talking about it last night. You know, we were talking about Ari's life now.